Unfortunately, you've grown up hearing voices that incessantly warn of government as nothing more than some separate, sinister entity that's at the root of all our problems. Some of these same voices also do their best to gum up the works. They'll warn that tyranny is always lurking just around the corner. You should reject these voices, because what they suggest is that our brave and creative and unique experiment in self-rule is somehow just a sham with which we can't be trusted.
Government is a necessary evil. At least that's what they keep telling us. They tell us that without government, society would be thrust back to the Stone Age and blood would flow in the streets. It would be chaos, mayhem. But with over 250 million people dead at the hands of state functionaries in the last century alone, not including other unspeakable atrocities, it's very clear that governments are as bad for the people as cancer is for the body. And if you question everything, like you should, you're probably thinking right now as you stare at the computer screen watching this video, prove it. Okay, I will. First, remember that it is said that one of the primary functions of government is to secure the blessings of liberty. Sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds like a noble goal. But here are just a few examples that history freely offers that the concept of government, or the idea that a person or group of people has a legitimate right to rule other people, actually removes the blessing of liberty. It doesn't secure them. Prior to January 29th, 1920, if you manufactured, transported, or sold intoxicating liquors, you were a productive, hard-working individual providing a high-demand product to the people willing to pay your price. This is called free trade, the voluntary exchange of goods and services to willing participants. Magically, however, when the very next day, January 30th, rolled around, that same person conducting that same business became a criminal simply because people who think they have a higher claim over the lives and properties of others said so, and then wrote their commands down on a fancy piece of paper. They called the ritualistic process legislation, and they called the fancy piece of paper a law. How is that consistent with securing the blessings of liberty? In the same way, on December 4th, 1933, the last night of Prohibition, you were a criminal if you were engaged in transporting liquor. When the clock struck midnight on December 5th, though, you magically had transportation and sales rights restored. 1933, that same year, FDR, through Executive Order 6102, made it illegal to own gold. If you had it in your possession on April 30th, you were okay. If it was still in your possession at 12 a.m. on May 1st, you were a criminal. And what happened if you decided to keep your gold and they caught you with it? You were fined $10,000, the equivalent to today's sum of $184,000. Or you received 10 years in prison, or both. So much for securing the blessings of liberty when someone can arbitrarily steal what you worked all your life to accumulate with the mere stroke of a pen and some willing state agents to enforce the new edicts of politicians. History is replete with examples of government intruding on and trampling individual rights. On June 18, 1971, Richard Nixon declared a war on people. No, he didn't call it that. He called it a war on drugs. But it wasn't. It was and still is a war on people.
Public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive.
The agents of government, really the ones who pull those agents' strings, decided that they knew what was best for you, and if you didn't abide by their advice, well, you got jail time and heavy fines. The lives of scores of people would be ruined, and the government would grow by leaps and bounds from the new revenue generated and allocated for a supposed war that would waste over $1 trillion over the next 40 years. And of course, the agents of government claim to have good intentions and claim to be doing it for the benefit of the people. But as Daniel Webster wisely observed, good intentions will always be pleaded for every assumption of authority. It is hardly too strong to say that the Constitution was made to guard people against the dangers of good intentions. There are men in all ages who mean to govern well, but they mean to govern. They promise to be good masters, but they mean to be masters. 58 days after the declaration of war on people, on August 15, 1971, the banking masters and international elitists had their Nixon puppet close the gold window and detach the American dollar from its gold backing. This meant that the money in your pocket now had a valuation set by the edict of those in power at the Federal Reserve. Your purchasing power was now soundly in the hands of a few powerful men. And of course, they did this to protect you, the public, from the international speculators. Or at least, that's what they said.
In recent weeks, the speculators have been waging an all-out war on the American dollar. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
For another damning statistic, over 48% of federal prisoners are locked up for non-violent drug crimes. They didn't hurt anybody, they didn't threaten anybody, they just possessed something that the authorities didn't want them to possess. Now lives are ruined and families have been destroyed. I'm not even going to take the time in this video to discuss the details of the Bretton Woods Agreement that bound all nations to support the US dollar by stipulating that they could only buy oil with our American currency. When will we as a people tire of war? When will we get tired of out-of-touch politicians parasitically sucking the life out of our economy and strapping untold generations with mountains of debt? Do you still believe that without government we would be worse off? Ask yourself, without government, would we be in $20 trillion worth of debt, not counting unfunded liabilities? Some economists estimate that our debt load is really north of $100 trillion. This is inconceivable and staggering and could not have happened without a willing people blindly buying into a false concept of centralized power. When will you wake up and realize that this is a lie? I want you to look into this guy's eyes. This is one of the most parasitic tyrants of our time, Hermann Göring, right-hand man to self-proclaimed dictator Adolf Hitler. If he knew one thing, he knew how to manipulate the masses and bend their will to his own. Listen to the truth he actually divulged at the Nuremberg trials in 1946, and consider that the ease with which the general population can be controlled was as effective then as it is now. He said, "Why, of course the people don't want war. Why would some poor slob on a farm want to risk his life in a war when the best he can get out of it is to come back to his farm in one piece? Naturally, the common people don't want war, neither in Russia, nor in England, nor in America, nor for that matter in Germany. That is understood. But after all, it is the leaders of the country who determine the policy, and it is always a simple matter to drag the people along. Whether it is a democracy, or a fascist dictatorship, or a parliament, or a communist dictatorship, voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them they're being attacked and denounce the pacifists for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same way in any country. Guys, the elites play on the emotional connection of the patriotism and nationalism of the American people. And as long as we are guided by our emotions, we will always be easily led to the slaughterhouse. So yes, it works the same way in any country. We are not immune. Don't you think it's time for this kind of manipulation to stop working in our country? Leave your thoughts for the world to see in the comments section below.
Guys, thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and share it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to see more videos like this, click that big red subscribe button down there, and as soon as I upload a video, you'll be one of the first to see it. If you want to support this channel, pick up one of these hard-hitting, conversation-starting shirts. You'll find the link in the description below, along with a plethora of other hard-hitting, high-impact designs. Remember, guys, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and indifference to this notion is the means by which the people will secure their own oppression. Let's stop securing our own oppression, and let's start today. I'll see you guys in the next video.